I want you to imagine standing around a fire. The year is 50,000 BC. No smartphones, no emails. It's just you, the flickering flames, and thick smoke curling directly into your face. Well, somewhere along the line, one of our ancient ancestors decided to inhale that smoke on purpose. This is the absolutely fascinating story of how humans first discovered smoking. The story of human smoking doesn't actually start with modern agriculture. It certainly doesn't start with colonial trade routes. No, it likely begins roughly 1,000,000 years ago. The oldest confirmed evidence of controlled fire comes from places like South Africa's Wonderwork Cave. Our ancestor, Homo erectus, sat around these contained fires to cook and stay warm. And in doing so, they were breathing in smoke every single day. For hundreds of thousands of years, inhaling campfire smoke was just an unavoidable, constant reality of prehistoric human life. The biology behind what happened next is just mind-blowing. You see, that campfire smoke wasn't always just burning wood. When ancient humans accidentally burned wild psychoactive plants, they inhaled a whole cocktail of compounds. And amazingly, the human brain already had receptors waiting for these specific chemicals. We call this our endocannabinoid system. It regulates mood, memory, and appetite. Because of this built-in biological setup, an accidental exposure to burning psychoactive plants instantly turned into a profoundly pleasant, mind-altering experience. Looking at the timeline, there's a massive chronological gap between early hominids controlling fire and the oldest physical evidence of intentional smoking. But think about it. Organic materials like wood dissolve incredibly quickly in the earth. Dried leaves and leather, they just don't last. A wooden pipe will literally disappear in a few centuries under normal conditions. So this vast empty space in the historical record doesn't mean humans weren't smoking. It simply means the physical evidence hasn't survived the immense weight of time. That brings us to a really groundbreaking number: 12,000. Back in 2019, researchers made an incredible discovery in Utah's Great Salt Lake Desert. They uncovered a 12,000-year-old hearth. And inside this ancient cooking fire, they found the seeds of a wild tobacco species native to North America. The seeds were concentrated in a way that heavily suggests they were deliberately placed there. This discovery is huge because it proves that intentional tobacco use existed thousands of years before the invention of pottery or smoking pipes. So this raises a profound question. Why did ancient people throw psychoactive plants into the fire in the first place? UCLA psychopharmacologist Ronald Siegel proposed what's known as the intoxication hypothesis. He suggests that the pursuit of intoxication is actually a fundamental biological drive. He argues it sits right alongside our most basic, undeniable needs like hunger, thirst, and sex. This drive to seek out altered mental states isn't just some cultural phenomenon. It's hardwired into us. It's deep in our evolutionary DNA. And we can actually observe this pursuit of intoxication all across the animal kingdom. Elephants deliberately seek out fermented marula fruit. Siberian reindeer will intentionally consume psychoactive mushrooms. Get this, those same reindeer have even been observed drinking the urine of other reindeer who ate the mushrooms just to recycle the active hallucinogenic compounds. When you see behavior this deeply embedded in nature, early human experimentation with psychoactive smoke makes perfect sense. By the time we reach 500 BC in the Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, the intentionality behind smoking is absolutely undeniable. Archaeologists excavating ritual burial sites found wooden braziers containing stones that had been superheated. Alongside these stones, they discovered the residue of cannabis plants. And this wasn't just your standard wild hemp used for making rope. This specific plant had an unusually high THC content. Our ancestors were deliberately selecting specific plants for their potent psychoactive properties. This archaeological discovery perfectly matches the accounts of the ancient Greek historian Herodotus. Writing in the 5th century BC, Herodotus described Scythian nomads creating these intense vapor baths. They would set up enclosed tents, they'd heat stones until they literally glowed, then they'd throw hemp seeds directly onto them. Herodotus wrote that the people inside the tents were howling with pleasure as they inhaled the smoke. For centuries, historians thought he was just exaggerating, but the physical evidence proves he was accurately reporting exactly what he saw. Which brings us to smoking as ancient medicine. Long before it was considered a recreational habit, deliberate smoke inhalation was utilized as a highly sophisticated medical treatment. Ancient people were actively using burning herbs to heal the sick. The Ebers Papyrus from ancient Egypt in 1550 BC prescribes the smoke of heated henbane to treat throat and lung conditions. In 400 BC, the Greek physician Hippocrates wrote about inhaling herbal vapors to treat diseases. And over in India, 3,000-year-old Ayurvedic texts detail protocols for dhumapana, which literally translates to smoke drinking. This was a globally recognized, incredibly deliberate practice. Now, I know this sounds wildly counterintuitive to us today. Treating lung problems by inhaling thick smoke seems entirely backwards, right? However, specific herbs like henbane actually possess genuine pharmacological properties when ignited. Delivering these properties directly to the lungs via smoke made total logical sense to ancient physicians. In many ways, this ancient practice is the direct logical predecessor to the modern asthma inhalers and anesthetic gases we rely on today. Beyond early medicine and intoxication, we really have to ask why inhaling psychoactive smoke was so deeply ritualized. Well, humans are deeply social animals. Early survival depended entirely on group cohesion. Inhaling smoke together was a vital piece of social technology. When ancient humans sat in closed space and entered an altered state collectively, it actually synchronized their neural activity. This shared experience built deep trust and enhanced group cohesion in incredibly harsh prehistoric environments. The steep reverence for the practice is especially clear when we look at the ancient Americas. Tobacco is native to the Americas. Its earliest use was strictly sacred, not recreational. It was treated with immense reverence. Ancient indigenous cultures used tobacco to communicate with the spirit world. It was a tool used to heal the sick. It was used to bind crucial agreements between tribes and to bless others. In this ancient context, a shaman blowing smoke wasn't just taking a casual cigarette break. Not at all. They were utilizing a carefully controlled, thousands of years old practice. The smoke itself was considered a living carrier. It was viewed as a literal messenger traveling between worlds. It carried prayers upward to the divine and brought spiritual visions downward to the living. Because it was so sacred, it was highly disciplined. You simply didn't chain smoke while going about your daily chores. This sacred dynamic changed completely with the European obsession. When 15th century European explorers encountered indigenous tobacco rituals, they immediately tried it themselves. Almost overnight, tobacco rapidly transformed from a sacred ritual into a global, everyday obsession. Over just 4 centuries, European industrialists systematically converted a revered plant into a mass-marketed commodity. In the 1600s, the global tobacco trade began. By the 1700s, powdered snuff became this massive aristocratic fashion trend across Europe. The 1800s saw the widespread rise of cigars. And finally, the early 1900s brought the invention of the industrially manufactured cigarette. Suddenly, tobacco was cheaper and more addictive than ever before. This massive commercialization led straight to the grim reality of the 20th century tobacco industry. Corporate executives spent billions suppressing their own internal evidence linking cigarettes to cancer. They deliberately engineered chemical additives. Why? Because they wanted the nicotine hit to land faster and absolutely maximize physical addiction. They hired doctors for product endorsements to build false trust. They even aggressively marketed their products directly to teenagers to hook the next generation. When you put it all together, it reveals an immense moral chasm in human history. On one side, you have a shaman in 500 BC. They're placing cannabis on hot stones with sacred reverence to foster communal bonding. On the other side, you have a 1960s executive. They are engineering a mass-market product while actively suppressing cancer evidence, purely for profit. Sure, both individuals worked with smoke, but absolutely nothing else about their actions or their intent is the same. Yet, through all of this, we see a thread of deep-time continuity. Beneath all the layers of modern industrialization, a profound truth remains. The fundamental human behavioral drive to alter our consciousness is incredibly ancient. We can actually trace a direct, unbroken thread spanning 100,000 years, from Homo erectus huddled around dark cave fires, to Egyptian physicians treating lungs with henbane, to Scythian nomads howling in vapor baths. Which leaves us with this final thought. The next time you sit around a summer bonfire or catch a whiff of wood smoke on a cold night, pay attention to that smell. Ask yourself a question. Are you simply participating in the oldest, most unbroken human tradition of breathing in the dark? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the history behind our most basic human habits.